The big challenge in those early days was that no one knew what we were dealing with. For humans, this was a completely new pathogen, a type of coronavirus. Now, viruses are extraordinary things. Some people say that they're not living organisms, but really I think of them as the simplest form of life. They're typically a fatty membrane which encloses a shell made of protein which itself protects a scrap of genetic code, either DNA or in this case RNA. Both are basic sets of genetic instructions. But here's the catch. To reproduce, all viruses have to hijack the cells of other organisms. So the viruses in the droplets produced when a patient with this new coronavirus, for example, coughs or sneezes, they can't reproduce unless they get inside the cells of another human being. And they get inside the cells using these red protein spikes on the surface of the virus. Now, these bind to receptors on the surface of the cell. And that allows them to get inside the cell. They shed that membrane and the protein capsid, and then the virus genetic code is interpreted by the cell as its own genetic code. And that turns the cell into a virus factory, creating thousands more copies of the virus. Viruses infect all life forms, animals, plants, even bacteria. The current pandemic of COVID-19 is caused by a coronavirus. Corona is the Latin name for crown, and these viruses look like round balls covered in these spikes, giving them this crown shape. This coronavirus is one of many. There are 4 that commonly circulate in humans, some of which we think have been around for hundreds, even thousands of years. And they usually cause cold and flu-like symptoms. The problem comes when a new strain of coronavirus emerges, like the one that caused the SARS outbreak in 2003 or this current pandemic. But where do these new strains emerge from and why? Within just a few weeks of the outbreak, scientists had mapped the virus's genome.
Hazel, hi.
And discovered that it shares 96% of its genetic code with a virus found in bats.
So I've got a brown long-eared bat here.
Hazel Ryan is a bat conservationist. Bats don't have a great reputation when it comes to very dangerous diseases. If we think of rabies, Ebola, MERS, SARS, and this new coronavirus, we think have all come from bats. Why is that?
Well, it's really because bats are able to carry these diseases without actually getting sick themselves. And even if they are introduced to pathogens in a lab, they don't seem to get sick. It doesn't induce a fever.
We're not sure why bats have such powerful immune systems.
There.
Oh, look at that.
But one theory is linked to the fact that they're the world's only flying mammal. As this bat flies around, it has a gigantically high metabolism. It's making far more heat than a human would through exercise. In flight, a bat's heart rate can shoot up to over 1,000 beats per minute. All that exertion takes a huge toll on their bodies, so bats have evolved to quickly repair cell damage. That could be one of the reasons that bats can host over 100 different viruses without getting sick. But how does a virus make the jump from a bat to a human? A bat coronavirus can infect another bat because spike proteins on its surface have adapted to attach to the cells of that species. But they can't usually attach to the cells of another species. However, that can change. So, the remarkable thing about bats is that bats live in their own cities, groups of tens of thousands or even millions of individuals. And a city, a group of animals that big is a unique environment because that enables viruses to be continually passed around. As they pass from bat to bat, the virus's genetic code is copied billions of times. But with so many copies being made, errors can creep in, called mutations. These mutations in the genetic code can subtly change the virus, reshaping those outer proteins, occasionally enabling them to latch onto the cells of a new species. But in this case, it's thought that it wasn't enough for the virus to infect humans. For that, it may have needed a helping hand. Ultimately, we're very sure that this coronavirus did originally come from a bat, and that's because it shares 96% of its genome with the bat virus. But it may have jumped to another animal before going to a human. And we know this has happened with another very dangerous coronavirus called MERS, where bats transmit the virus to camels, who then pass it to humans. In this case, we think the intermediary animal might have been something called a pangolin. If a bat virus has travelled through an intermediary animal before, it could do it again. Scientists looking at coronaviruses in pangolins noticed cases where their outer spikes, crucial for infecting cells, were very similar to the one found on this new human virus. The theory is, passing through the pangolin allowed the virus to evolve so it could infect humans. Pangolins and bats are caught in huge numbers from the wild, then trafficked to wet markets like this, where they're traded for meat. Live animals awaiting slaughter can be exposed to infected blood, urine, or other bodily fluids. It's the perfect opportunity for a virus to jump species. But wildlife markets are only part of the problem. Nearly a third of all cases where viruses jump from animals to humans are thought to be caused by changes in land use and intensive farming. Veterinary pathologist Professor Andrew Cunningham specialises in wildlife diseases.
It's not a coincidence that we talk about avian influenza and swine influenza. Those are the two species that are farmed intensively the most around the world. Thousands and thousands of animals packed in together, and that's a very good environment for a new virus to emerge from a mutation.
With lots of one species in one place, a virus can rapidly infect thousands of individuals. As it multiplies, the chance of this virus mutating into one that can jump species dramatically increases.
We are reducing the biodiversity on our planet, and we are interacting with what wildlife is left in a way that we haven't historically done before. And those two things combined, we think, are allowing these pathogens to jump over from wildlife hosts into people.
There are no easy answers here. Farming and intensive land use produce the food we've grown so accustomed to. But this is an area that must change if we want to reduce the risk of future pandemics.